Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Erika Mouynes, Minister, Panama Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Panama.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I would like to take the opportunity to talk about the importance of putting sustainability and gender at the center of the policies of all of our nations around the world, and how that would be the key to achieving economic well-being. This is the first time that we are all speaking the same language. And when I say the same language is every time I have a call with a colleague, another Minister of Foreign Affairs from anywhere in the world, regardless of the continent, the same question starts the conversation. How's your vaccine program going? How are you doing with the economic recovery, the pandemic, COVID cases? So we all have right now the same problems and the same agenda that we should put forward. So this is the time that we should be talking and making sure that the priorities in that agenda are aligned with what will be the well-being of our planet. Beyond this crisis, there is a unique opportunity ahead of us. Since as governments were changing, we're all facing the same challenges, the agenda that we put forward is the agenda that we want. So it's not enough to say, I care about something if you're not putting it at the top of your agenda. Our response to COVID is fundamentally a question of who we are. When we say that we want to ensure the well-being of half the world's population, because women represent half of the world's population, do we believe it? Or do we say it because it sounds nice, because it's a nice soundbite, or to be diplomatic? I believe in women, yes, I support women, but when it comes to the national agendas, it doesn't seem to have a gender lens. And there is so much we can do, so much. How about all those massive budgets if we start dedicating to the economic recovery to include gender perspective? For instance, fiscal credits, if you're putting something specific, or incentives, something specific with the gender lens. Promote, for instance, microfinancing for women entrepreneurship to make sure that whenever lending programs you have, to make sure that there's a component specific for women. At the end, any effort to mitigate the fallout of the COVID-19 without the gender lens dilutes its efficacy. And this has to come from the profound understanding that gender equity is the key to global success. And we should believe it, because there is overwhelming data that supports this conclusion. It's no longer an idea, it's no longer sort of maybe it makes sense. There's data that supports that having more women and gender equality, it's better for the economy. So now, with this unique opportunity presented with the pandemic recovery, it is our time to step up and establish a new, more inclusive world order. In Panama, we are doing our part. I take myself as an example. In our continent, 35 countries, there are only 4 women that are ministers of foreign affairs. 4. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was at a meeting of heads of state representing 31 countries. There were 2 women sitting at the table representing countries. We need more women. And we need women in positions of leadership to ensure and protect a gender lens in all of our agendas. In Panama, we have made mandatory for boards to have at least 30% representation in boards. And that is not just for the government or not just for the private sector, for both, because this has to be a national agenda. With the pandemic, we also enacted regulation to protect and ensure women, particularly mothers, returning to work. We were able to notice that when the lockdowns were eliminated, they were slower to return the women, or that the companies were in fact discouraging women to return, saying that if they chose to stay, it would be okay. So we wanted to actually make sure that those women, if they wanted and if they had the opportunity, they could do so. We also established microfinancing loans specifically dedicated for women, and they were massively successful. Women are eager to participate. They want to reinvent themselves. Now with the pandemic, there are all sorts of new opportunities and new challenges, and the women were at the forefront looking for this microfinance lendings to make sure that they have the access to credit and making the program fully successful. And we also developed a roadmap to promote women participation in non-traditional Korean courses, because with the slow economic recovery and women, particularly young women, eager to get back to the job market, it is a unique opportunity also to make sure that if there are not enough jobs available, that education is there, and education in specific courses that address the new challenges that we face. So making sure that those opportunities specifically for women were available was key for our administration. Because at the end, women are prepared, they are ready, they're eager, and past the pandemic, they can readapt themselves and they're ready to do so. There's also an interesting study that was recently published by the University of California saying that out of 130 countries, those that had women in leadership positions were more eager and ready to commit themselves to environmental friendly commitments and treaties. So it goes back now to the second point and the real crisis now that we're facing, which is the climate crisis, and how wonderful to have more women in leadership positions could also make sure that we're doing what is needed at this time. Because for those that seem to think that global warming was an idea, that we were all exaggerating, that it wasn't as bad, now you just have to turn on the news, read the newspaper. Every second or third news is about global warming, about climate change. There's a natural disaster, something's all related. It could be migration, that at the end, same cause, poverty, etc. So it is the crisis that we're facing, and whether we're in the pandemic or not, we need to understand and put our focus of the agenda in that. And Panama is doing its part. Panama is one of 3 countries in the world that is carbon negative. One of 3, Bhutan, Suriname, and Panama. And it's very interesting because if you think about the 3 countries, we're all vastly different with different geographies, with different economies. So if we, the 3 of us, we were able to achieve and being not carbon neutral, carbon negative now, and actually commit ourselves to maintain it, everybody can do so. I'll take, for example, Panama. Our economy is a service-based economy. We also have one of the main waterways in the world, the Panama Canal. But we understood the importance of true commitment to the environment, and that what is good for the planet is ultimately also good for the economy. At this point, we emit less carbon or less greenhouse gases than the ones that our forests are able to absorb. We have a tremendous amount of protected areas, and we continue to do so, and our commitment stands the same. This is an accomplishment that sets a standard for developed nations across the world. But it also highlights the injustice, and I'll say, in our case, on one side, we're doing all this for the planet, we are carbon negative, and on the other, we're spending, right now we have a project for over $1 billion to make sure that there's enough water for the Panama Canal. Because of the climate change, we've gotten less rainfall than other years, and we are not able to sustain it. So you can see in a very clear and simple picture, on one side, a nation doing more than its part, and on the other, having profound negative effects because of climate change. And we're all doing it on our own. We're not getting any financing, any support specifically designed for this. So I think at the point when you talk about Bhutan, Suriname, and Panama all doing the same, all doing their part, not really getting resources or support, we need to come together, think about how we're addressing and making sure that the standard is set at the same level for all countries. As a nation that connects the 2 largest oceans, we've also dedicated ourselves to put not only rainforests, but oceans specifically at the forefront of the agenda. I think that we talk often and we think about the climate crisis that we're dealing. We tend to focus in rainforests, which is important, but the biggest carbon sink in the world are the oceans. And any minor thing or change that we can do would make a huge and significant difference. In our case, just recently, about 2 months ago, we were able to enact a law that protects 30% of our oceans. So the target for most countries was in 9 years, on 2030. We did it now. And if we can do it now, everybody can do it. So it wasn't easy. We also had fishermen industries. We had a lot of frustration from particular sectors, but we drove the agenda with a clear goal in mind that this was important. And it's important, but what can Panama do would be 10 times better if we can do it together as a region. That's why we're encouraging and supporting our neighboring countries, Ecuador, Colombia, and Costa Rica, to ensure that they do the same. So instead of just being the protected area of that marine corridor that Panama already enacted, it would be Costa Rica, Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador, and the entire marine corridor, providing an enormous benefit in terms of carbon sink and the biodiversity that is protected in that corridor. So again, another example of what you can do, each one, your agendas locally, but also if you do it regionally and you work with other partners. At the end, I think that putting an emphasis on both sustainability and gender policies, Panama is showing how you can drive economic growth strategies and how both are needed to continue improving people's well-being well into the 21st century. At the end, it's the same understanding. When you understand that putting gender-based strategies, when you put women at the top of your agenda, when you put climate at the top of the agenda, it's not just because it's a good soundbite. It will be good for the economy, it's good for the planet, it's good for everybody. Thank you very much.